And so that's the first thing I did was I put the core values on paper, put the mission on paper, put the vision over time on paper, and the vision changes. I mean, you're always like, here we go. I spent those first few years really focusing on the culture, the processes, and some of those things. And I didn't know what I didn't know. And that's still the same today.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the podcast. Today we've got a very special guest with us. He's the CEO of Barry Walter Company. But yeah, one thing that he really prides on is made in America products, and that's something that I think it's great, and I think we need to be doing a little bit more of. But yeah,
dude. I was doing some research on him, and I came across like an interesting article. It's from NAM.org, and it said that the average annual compensation of someone working in manufacturing is almost $96K, and that was in 2021. That was very interesting because usually like more like the labor jobs, like the blue collar jobs, are looked down upon, and for some reason I don't really know how it got there, but for some reason it's like looked down upon, and it's not that way. It's a lot different than what people actually think.
Yeah, I'm a huge proponent of the trades. I'm a huge advocate for career pathways and getting students exposed to career pathways. I work with the schools in the community. I just was the keynote speaker for Fort Morgan High School's Career Day. Anything I can do to help get the youth exposed to career pathways, I'm all about. Because go hire a plumber right now and tell me how much they charge you an hour. And then tell me that's not a livable wage if you were a plumber in this town, right? I mean,
yeah.
It's crazy the amount of money we spend on higher education without a career pathway in mind. So
how do you think it got to that point where it kind of looks like, I don't know if frowned upon is the right word, but they don't
it's not as
they don't give it the respect that it should get.
Right. Well, and so like I'm older than you guys. I'm old enough to be your guys' dad.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, you don't look like it.
Gonna be 55.
Looking great.
55 this
great.
July. I got kids older than you. But I think my parents were of that generation that constantly talked about you have to go to college. You have to go to college if you want a good career. You got to go to college, and so we swung that pendulum to that side, and I did. I went to college. I got a degree. I worked at a psych hospital with adolescents. I had this, and you burn out. And I've got so many friends that went to school for a specific career pathway and did that 4 years of college in debt, and which debt 30 years ago compared to the college debt now is crazy.
It's ridiculous now.
It's growing a little bit, huh?
and then they don't have their, they don't use their career. I got a good friend of mine that's a lawyer in Denver, and he hates his job. He goes, man, if I could be a plumber, go back and be a plumber.
So why is he still, I guess, lawyer?
I think it's the right now trying to figure out what to do at 45 with the amount of time he's spent in that career and the money he makes now. The nice thing is he's looking at saying, okay, I'm just going to scrap it all and move, but that's get out of the high income or high cost of living in Denver. But
yeah, because we know like people personally who have gone to school and have this degree and they don't use it for anything. Yeah. It's just like a pat on the back. You did something for 4 years.
Every one of our machinists, every single one of them were trained in-house. You're not going to find CNC shop in Fort Morgan, Colorado. We've got 15 CNC lathes. We go through 7,000 pounds of brass a week. We make stems and cartridges, repair parts for plumbing. And so we're selling to wholesalers throughout the country. The only real customer we have in Fort Morgan is Dahl, and that's by our choice. We wanted to have a place that the plumbers would be able to go and get some parts to be able to so they weren't going to Ace Hardware and buying retail. But
kind of on that, if I could add to that, when you're, I guess you could say, you got a lot of good sayings, but one of them is like, we hire for culture and we train for skills. Especially when you're doing like, you got to train. There's a lot of training that goes into one of those machines, I'm guessing, to get it making those.
Yeah. We say that it's typical for 3 months before one of our team members is going to be, actually making money on the machines, making the company any money on the machines. It's going to be at least 3 months to learn basics.
How do you come up with those models then? Because then technically you could be like, people are like, well, I'm going to be losing money for 3 months. Like, how does that, or how is your mindset? Like,
they almost think it's not worth it to hire someone because it's going to be 3 months invested, kind of wasted.
So this is the thing. If you look at the trades, and I've got a lot of friends that are in the trades, electricians, plumbers, and I hear all the time, oh, no one wants to work, no one wants to, I train them and they leave, which my answer is better you train them and they leave than you don't train them and they stay.
That's a good one.
But it's a different mindset, right? I just had one of my guys yesterday, took the day off, and he talked to me a month ago, but he went up to Wyoming to a machine shop for a job interview. He and his wife want to move out of the state, and he got a job offer. And I coached him that whole entire time. Make sure you're asking questions yourself when you go to the interview. Make sure you're following up after the interview. And it's not because I want him to leave. It's because I want him to do what's best for him in his life. I got guys that are machinists that's in Florida. I got a machinist friend that moved to Loveland that went to work for Burris, and now he's in Greeley. I got former machinists that are all over the place. I'm okay with that. I want them to do what's best for themselves. At the same time, our average tenure of a team member that's without the last name Walter, okay, without the last name Walter, is 11 and a half years. Okay, so it's not like I'm losing people all the time, losing team members all the time. It's just that there's all of us, right, have opportunity to do something else at times. This is not your first career. This is not your first career. And I'm okay with losing men and women that we've helped better themselves, right? I want them to leave me with a focus on that as a company that understands leadership and culture, and I want to go take some of what I learned to other people.
It's basically like you're investing 3 months into the person and you're going to get 11 plus years out of them.
Absolutely.
That kind of goes back to it's like you're saying, like you train for culture, and then you said that it's better you train them and they leave than they stay and you don't train them.
Right.
That kind of goes back into like the leadership in the company, like the culture that, because we were talking about earlier, that the founder establishes, and as you grow the company, it's kind of lost in transition somewhere because
it can be. So I took over the business 8 years ago. So anecdotal story, but I was the COO at the time. I was chief operating officer. I had a buddy who was doing a podcast, a 3-gun podcast, and he's like, "Hey, can you listen to it?" I said, "Sure." And I thought to myself, I bet you there's a bunch of podcasts that I would like listening to. All right, well, what am I into? I'm into guns. I'm into Dodgers. So I started looking up other podcasts and started listening to some of them. Like, well, that doesn't interest me. That doesn't interest me. And I thought, well, what about business podcasts? And I saw that Dave Ramsey, who I admire as someone who talks about money and good use of money as far as spend less than you make. I saw he had a podcast called Andre Leadership, and I thought, well, that'd be really good. I think he has a book with that, so I'll read the book. And the book talked about, he talked in the book about how he was coming home after 12-hour days, just putting out fires all day long, hamster in a hamster wheel, just running it. And he'd come home and his wife Sharon would say, "What'd you do today?" And he'd say, "I have no idea." Like 12 hours, gone, no freaking clue, because it just was, the business ran him. And I thought, holy crap, this is my life. That's what I do. That's all I do. And so I have 3 younger brothers, and all of us, every one of us said, we're not going to work in the family business. We all got degrees. We all went out and worked, and then we all came back. And so I went to my younger brothers and I said, I'm done. I've got plenty of friends that have offered me jobs. I can't do this anymore. Either we take over the business or I quit. And they said, okay. So I went to my dad's office. I said, you're out. You're no longer in charge. And he said, sweet. And he got up, and this is, anecdotal because he's, a little facetious, but he said, see ya. And he disappeared for 3 months. He went up to Montana, did some hunting, did some fishing, hung out with some friends.
So it wasn't like a hostile takeover.
Oh, gosh, no. And I think he was waiting.
He's waiting for someone to step up.
Yeah.
Do you think that's, what do you kind of attribute to it? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's what you would say a good leader wants. You want somebody else to kind of step up. So he was maybe he's waiting for you guys to be like, I'm not giving it to you because you're not. It doesn't seem like you're ready because you're not taking power.
You're not taking it.
Or it feels forced, like if he does give it to you.
And this saying popped into my head. Okay, because we were talking about how like Leaf was saying he has a lot of sayings when he was on your podcast. One of the things I say in the building all the time is you should be training your replacement. You should be training your replacement because you're more valuable the more you're training your replacement. I can't give you more things to do if you haven't trained somebody else to take some of the stuff that you have. And if I need to hire somebody so that you can have somebody to train so that you can move up and learn more things, then I'm all for it. But back to my, okay, go ahead.
I'm just saying that all this stuff is like great what you're saying. I'm just thinking because I always find myself, but I find myself kind of like how you were. How did you come around to this where there's like, I need a change? Like,
well, I think that book, Entre Leadership, started it. And then I'll say this. Then I went to the podcast and I pounded, like 100,
okay, like
literally 100, 150 podcast episodes in a month. It was stupid.
Wow,
like
okay.
I literally drank from the fire hose. And the first thing I did, so my dad did a great job, Barry Sr. did a great job of having a culture, but it wasn't on paper on purpose, right? It was, he treated people right, he treated the customer right, and so he had loyalty, he did the right things, but it wasn't on paper on purpose. And so that's the first thing I did was I put the core values on paper. Put the mission on paper, put the vision over time on paper, and the vision changes. You're always like, here we go. And I spent it's been 9 years now, 2015, when I took over. And so I spent those first few years really focusing on the culture, the processes, and some of those things. And I didn't know what I didn't know. And that's still the same today. We put a sales process in place in 2021, and so from the end of the year 2020 to the end of the year 2021, we grew 15%, and every year since we've grown 13 to 15% every year. This year, right now, it's stupid. Right now, I think we're on a 18%, which we can't do.
What do you think? What do you think it comes down to? Like what was that shift in that time that now it's growing at that rate?
Sales process, putting a sales process. So I spent, like I said, I spent probably the first 4 or 5 years focused on the culture, the processes, but not the sales process. We had sales reps before, and now we have salesmen that are salespeople, whatever you say it, that are W-2 employees. They're team members. Okay. And so we got away from the rep, and we've got people that are bought into the culture, bought into to what we do, and are focused on serving that customer. One of our 6 core values is serve others, and so that's build relationships is another one, and so we've got people that are bought into it and put a sales process in place, and this year's going to be even, like I said, even probably bigger in the sales.
It reminds me of a video I saw of I don't know if you know him, Alex Hormozi. Mm-hmm. He's a super jacked.
Oh, he's
super jacked,
healthy health leader kind of thing, right?
He's more into the marketing side. He doesn't really talk too much about like fitness and all that stuff. But he was saying that if you have a stack of boxes and he's like, cool, I'll give you 10 seconds to build it as high as possible. You're going to build it like one box at a time. But then if he tells you, cool, now you got 10 days to build the tallest tower, you're going to take your time and build that foundation, right?
Yeah.
Because in the long run, it's not going to easily tip over. Right. And that's kind of what you did. You kind of just took your time building the foundation.
Absolutely. We focused on that culture, that mission, vision, values. We built that up. We put the structure in place. We did some lean. I don't know if you guys are familiar with lean when it comes to manufacturing, but that's there's always a better way. So coming up with efficiencies in the manufacturing process to be able to do more in the most efficient way possible. And so we did a lot of that in the beginning, and the only bad thing is that this kind of growth exposes things. The kind of growth we've experienced over the last 4 years is exposing all the processes you thought you had in place that weren't as maybe good as you thought.
They're good for the smaller scale, but once you actually scale it up bigger, it's like no way.
Well, the podcast, right? I am a huge podcast guy now. Ever since that, and it's all the thought leaders in business. The Simon, I love reading Simon Sinek and Jim Collins. I love listening to the Dave Ramsey EntreLeadership, the Patrick Lencioni at the table. There's a bunch of manufacturing leadership podcasts I listen to. Reading the Simon Sinek, Jim Collins, like I said. The Vern Harnish wrote Scaling Up, and he talks about how as you're scaling a business, cash is key. Because you have to have, you're growing your inventory, you're growing people, you're growing infrastructure, you're growing processes, and those things take money. And so you've got to be, our goal, my brothers and my goal is to be debt free, the business to be debt free this year. I don't know if we'll hit it, but it'll be close.
The thing kind of where you're saying that you need cash to grow the business, do you think you kind of have to be learning with it as the cash comes in? Because if you just go get out a loan for, say, $1 million or something, and then you don't know how to allocate those $1 million right, they're gonna go away like dust.
See, and loan to me is the opposite of what I want to be doing. I do not want to be borrowing money to do what we're doing. I understand, and don't get me wrong. We're in a business that sometimes you have to borrow money to buy a $500,000 machine. We've got 15 CNC machines, and there's a couple of those that we've spent up to $500,000 buying them. So you're not going to go out and just pull.
Here you
go. But the last, one of the last two machines we bought, we paid cash for. We were able to. We were in that spot, and that's just a different mindset than we've had in the past. But it's super critical to me to be financially stable enough that we can borrow the money from ourselves eventually, and that's one of the things I'm working on is a war chest to be able to, because I got big plans. I got 50-year goals that I won't be around for, but I want to make sure that I'm focused on those things to put that vision in place.
You're talking about like the processes and like your sales process. What kind of goes into like making a process? Is it like some like, oh, this checklist, here we go? Or is it
every process is different, right? Your hiring process is different than your sales process, but having it on paper on purpose is the key. Okay, and there's a lot of processes we don't have on paper right now, and we're like, we better put this on, because it's been a fringe process that, oh, well, I take care of, or Franklin takes, or Lauren, and so it's not a big deal because we're taking care of it. Well, now it's getting to the point where it's like, I can't handle that process. I'm too busy over here doing this, and so we better put it on paper if we're going to make sure that we train somebody correctly. So on paper on purpose for processes is first.
How many, I guess, like trial and errors do you go through?
Because we're asking because we're kind of going through the same things. We're like you said, like you need how are you gonna train the other person? You're like, cool, you can take care of it, but then how do I tell somebody else what I'm doing if I don't write it? And that's where the fun begins.
I wish I had good answers. A lot of it is trial and error. right? Like the hiring process. So we do 3 interviews, like I said, before we hire. Well, where did I get that? I got that from Entree Leadership. It was what Dave Ramsey talks about. That's how he hires. We do a drive-by interview, and this is where then it gets into our spin on it. So we do a drive-by interview where we spend 15 minutes talking to the candidate about how we behave as an organization. Because that right there is going to be the first thing. Here's how we behave. Here's who we are. Here's our core values. This is what you can expect if you become a team member.
That way they can be like,
we're out. I'm out. Like, right. I'm out right now. I'm out right now. And then 15 minutes of them telling us about themselves. So we can say, all right, this is somebody I want to keep talking to. Then we'll go out and show them what we do, how we do it, and give them more of a visual of what it is. This is the role that we're looking to hire you for is here, right? So they can see that. Then there's the second interview is going to be a team leader, another team member, maybe in that area that they're going to be in. Excuse me. And that is going to be 35, 45, 50 minutes. It's going to be, some questions about, what's your strengths, weaknesses, the typical stuff. Mm-hmm. The last one is almost, it has been. It's always with me and maybe another team leader, another team member. And that one is going to tend to be a little bit weird, just because I have weird questions. And when you answer them, I'm going to dig deeper and dig deeper. And
we're like more like personal questions?
Yeah, sure.
Word's good.
I like saying, okay, so here's the question. What's the one question that we haven't asked you that you thought we would? Okay. What's the one question we haven't asked you that you hope we don't? Okay.
So it kind of turns into like they kind of have to interview themselves.
They got to think a little bit. I want to know who you are as a person. We're sitting there to see how are you going to fit into the culture of the organization. And by culture, I don't mean gender, skin color, religion. That doesn't matter. It's here's our core values: family first, serve others, build relationships. We value small business. Made in America matters. Work should be fulfilling. Okay? And we have these on a wall, but they're not just on a wall. We define them. We say, what does this mean? And then we say, what does it look like in the building? And everything we do filters through that. Now, there's some things that don't matter, right? The color of the shirt that you wear to work, I don't care. Right, but there's things that are in there that matter, and so we talk about those core values and how they relate to what we do in the building, right? We serve others. So I put my money where my mouth is. We give an hour of PTO for every hour they serve in a local nonprofit, a Morgan County local nonprofit. Now I've got a list of six or seven that are just automatic. You don't even have to ask me. Beyond that, you need to, get approval for it. Because if you say, hey, I want to serve in my local church, well, guess what? You should be doing that anyways. I'm not paying you to do that. but to go to the Humane Society or Sarah volunteer, any of the things that are out there that are helping our community, and you serve there, I'll give you an hour PTO for every hour you go serve there.
How much people take you up on it? Like when you say percentage-wise?
50%.
That's great.
That's not bad. Yeah, I would like it higher, obviously. We do try to work with Rising Up to do a day once a year where we'll have a sign-up sheet at the shop and people can sign up, and it's usually only 3 hours or whatever. We'll go over and help Pam Hernandez and sort food or something, and then they get at least 4 hours of PTO for that. But
having the 3 separate interviews, I think, is also like another vetting process, because if they're not willing to go through the 3 interviews to get hired, then they don't want it bad enough, and you probably didn't want that person on your team anyways.
And we're looking for that person that's going to be that good cultural fit, like I said, and then the process of onboarding, right? So what's that look like? Well, that first week they don't go anywhere near their job. The tasks that they're going to do for when they get full time, working. I mean, they're full time that first week, but they don't go near. So if you're hired as a machine operator, you're going to spend the first day, with me doing culture stuff, talking about that, then working with the director of operations and going through, part numbers and how we do that. And the second day, you're going to work with the shop laborer and see how he assists the machinists keeping their jobs running. Then you're going to go to the second op area the third day, and you're going to work in there and help. And at the same time, you're going to go to the CAD operator, which is computer aided drawing. So the guy that does all the prints and the solid models and all the drawings of the parts. And you're going to go up and work with our customer service leader, and you're going to work with her, and she's going to put in orders and answer phones and just show you what she does. You're going to go in the warehouse, and you're going to assemble parts. You're going to ship parts. You're going to do all the things that everybody else does that doesn't do your role, because this is a team, and it's a team function. And the linemen on a football field have to understand what the running backs are doing to make the play successful. Same thing. I'm doing sports analogies because we all three understand the sports, but that idea of making the whole team get across that finish line to be successful, because that's what success means is we serve the customer well, that they keep coming back and saying thank you.
How are the conversations had? Because you said a lot of people, like, it's a family-owned business. So it's like, how are those conversations had? Like, does any of that go like home? Like when you see them later at the birthday party? Because so we have other guys, team members that work with us too. But it's me and Eric. It's like sometimes you got to have those weird conversations. If not, it's just gonna get weirder later. How do you deal with those?
So when it comes to family, right? So my three younger brothers and I are pretty close. We have a weekly meeting where we meet every week, closed door, go over the finances. We have an agenda. We go over the same agenda every week. We're looking at order points. We're looking at hiring. We're looking at processes. We're talking about all those kind of things that we need to be looking at. And then we make some decisions on things that have popped up that we need to talk about. And that door is closed for a reason, because there's some times where we butt heads on stuff. And once we make a decision, we agree that we're all going to get behind the decision, and we're going to do this. And we do pretty well at that. But it's been 8 years of it. Another little anecdote, but my phone, when it rings from one of my three younger brothers, the ringtone is a song. There's a band called Need to Breathe, and they have a song called Brother. And I think it's either called Brother or it's called Shelter, but I think it's called Brother. And it's, Brother, won't you be my shelter? And so that's the song that comes on when any one of those three call me. And we have an email address in the building that everybody can reach the four of us, and it's called shelter@barrywalter.com. And so we're very focused, the four of us, on this idea that yes, we're family, and yes, there's going to be friction with that family part, but we're going to make sure that we have that conflict early and often when we need to make sure it doesn't turn into something with team members like, those guys don't get along, do they? They're going to get our lawyers involved. I mean, you hear stories about businesses that the family members have to get their lawyers involved. So,
how often, like when you have those closed doors, do you have because they're your younger brothers, like calling out the big brother? Because I think we always need someone always to call, not say you're doing it wrong, but be like, hey, have you ever thought about it this way?
Oh, yeah.
Are they pretty open to have that, or they're just? I think
so. I would like to think so. Again, I'm big in so back to that culture thing. I'm big into this idea of 5 enemies of unity. There's one of those is conflict avoidance. It's an enemy of unity. If you're not embracing conflict, and I tell my team leaders all the time. Yes, I understand that you don't like conflict, but if your team member, you're the team leader. If you're the your team member shows up 50 minutes late every single day and you wait a month to talk to him about that, now it's a much bigger problem than the first time he walks in and you say, hey, if you're going to be 15 minutes late, I need a text, right? Tell me what's going on.
Instead of like, hey, dude, you've been late this whole month.
Now
like,
it's
what's
escalated.
Yeah.
Right?
Now
So have it quickly, and it's not an awkward conversation. I said we have 6 core values. That 6th one, the work fulfillment, work should be fulfilling. That was added 2021. And I remember I brought it to my brother and I said, our team building meeting, because we have 2 team meetings a month, a team recognition meeting at the beginning of the month and a team building meeting at the end of the month. And everybody in the building, it's an all hands meeting, everybody stops what they're doing. But anyways, we had a team building meeting coming up, and I said, during this team building meeting, which I'm usually the one that runs it, we're going to introduce a new core value. And my youngest brother, and again, my parents had me young, they were 18, and they have 4 of us, and there's 20 years difference. So there's a little bit of a difference between myself and my youngest.
Yeah, a little bit.
And the one that's 20 years younger said to me, what do you think this is? You don't get to just decide core values, blah, 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 which is good. He wasn't scared to confront me on it. And I said, hold on. I said, it's work fulfillment. And he goes, oh, we talk about this all the time. And I said, yeah, that's why it's a core value. We're codifying it as a value now. We're putting it on purpose on paper. It's not just me talking about another saying in the building. If you're pulling up to the building and you're doing this every day, then you're either on the wrong seat on the bus or on the wrong bus altogether. And so now it doesn't mean that we don't come to work some days, all of us, and go, right?
Yeah,
but
there's going to be days where you just
days
have to
like
push
that.
through it and just
But the idea is that you come into the building 90% of the time and you're happy to be there. You want to be a part of something bigger than yourself. This is something that's fulfilling to you, and as long as that's happening, then you're probably on the right seat and on the right bus. So
it's like the core values is pretty much stuff you guys are already doing, stuff what you already believe in. It's just writing it down. It
should be. That was the point, was to put it on paper on purpose. So I don't know how off topic we've got on some of the questions.
Good. That was good.
That's all good.
Because another thing you said is like people aren't born leaders.
No.
You train leaders.
I'm trying to train myself to be a better leader all the time, right? I mean,
that's a good trait of a good leader.
That's my goal. What
do you do to, I guess, educate yourself and be better?
Reading. Podcast. Have the humility to know that I don't know you don't know what you don't know, right? And so you're, I love when Leaf had the Nelson Mandela quote. It was, that you're either
what is it, like you're failing or what is it?
Yeah, you're
learning. You're not
learning
failing.
or failing.
Yeah,
you're either learning or you're failing. Or you're either because you're winning or you're learning or something like that. That idea of the failure is just right. It's okay to make mistakes, just make new ones. That's another one we say in the building. So for me, I'm constantly trying to learn how to become a better leader by podcasts, reading, and then I got tons and tons of buddies that are industry leaders all over the country. They're running their own businesses. They're businesses that are bigger than mine, that have been there, done that. And so getting on the phone and saying, holy crap, I just got punched. Here's what happened, right? Because you're not paying attention to something because you didn't know it was important, and you're scaling, and all of a sudden now it's like, oh crap, that's something I got.
That's interesting because you're in the same industry, but you don't see yourself as like competition.
But not just the same industry. I've got Donnie Edson here in town is a good friend of mine. Guy's brilliant, and so talking to him about stuff.
But the people you do have in your same industry, you don't see them as competition.
Well, but they're mostly customers too.
Okay.
They're mostly customers. Some of my closest friends are customers of mine. Guys that I can call up. I can I can text. I can pray with. I can do the things that I need to do to be able to get me through the next day of things.
The big thing too, if I could add to that, is I think sometimes like us as business owners, we're afraid to put ourselves out there like, shit, we messed up doing this or what. But as everyone's kind of going through something in their business, and they'd be like, hey, I had XYZ go on with an employee. And then you talk to somebody else like, oh, yeah, we had that go on a couple years ago.
This is how we did.
This is what we did. So
Yep.
it's like, oh.
That's important.
Yeah. So stuff like, it's pretty much like you're helping each other out with.
So humility. So back to the hiring thing too. So we're looking for 6 things when we're hiring. Okay, humble, hungry, smart, problem-solving skills, critical thinking skills, and social skills. Okay, and
which do you think is the hardest one to be able to get out of all those?
no, everybody's different. Every person, like if I said to you, humble, hungry, smart, rank them 1 to 3, it's going to be different than Eric's. It's going to be different than mine. Okay, I know what my biggest, hardest thing to do is the humility. I think I'm the smartest guy in the room almost all the time. And so because of that, it's the one I focus on the most. It's the one that I'm like, okay, Barry, you screwed this up, you screwed this up, you screwed this up. Remember that, because you ain't the smartest guy in the room.
But do you think? What do you think that you kind of need to have a little bit of that to be able to grow to where you're at today? Because then if
you're talking about the smart part, do you think you're smart, or
no,
the
like
humility?
Humility. Like you think
you
you're
have
good
to have the humility.
because. No, I'm saying like because you're saying like sometimes the one that you deal the hardest.
But here's the thing, I don't lack in confidence, and that's the thing I always tell people when I'm talking about humble. I'm not talking about lack of confidence.
Got it.
I have plenty of confidence. There's nothing I can't do. I mean, there's just well, I can't have babies, I guess, but there's
Business-wise.
there's almost well, I mean like
Throwing the
I helped frame my house. I did all the electrical on my house. I did the flooring. I built 3 sets of solid hickory countertops. I mean, there's very little that I can't learn to do. Okay. But humility requires me to say that's my screw up. And so when I'm hiring somebody, I'm looking for that humility to say, yeah, I'm not scared to say I screwed that up. I have the confidence to do the next thing, but I also have the humility to say, yeah, when I screw up, that was my fault. So humble is that humility to say you screwed up. Hungry, we all know what that is, right? That fire in the belly. That's how you guys got to do what you're doing now. It's a certain fire in the belly. Smart isn't book smart. It isn't common sense smart. It's people smart, because we're working as a team. And so if you're not people smart, right, you're not going to notice that person's off. That person's got something going on. You're not, and you have to be able to do that if you're working as a team. Problem-solving skills and critical thinking skills are a little bit different. You know, the being able to solve a problem and then being able to critical think and you know the be able to eliminate A because this, you know, eliminate B. Okay, well now I'm over here on C. And then social skills, again, goes back to the teamwork part of it, being able to communicate. I had a team member one time. This is about team. He said, Barry, you pay me to stand here and set up machines. I said, no, I pay you to help your team set up machines. If your production went down 20%, and the other 9 guys went up 10%, how much more valuable is that? Right? Because now you're talking about 9 guys going up 10% in production. You only went down 20. And the whole team's production went up, though, because you were doing things to help everybody else go up 10%. That's huge. But so that's the teamwork part.
Kind of on that note, you said you read a lot of stuff, listen to a lot of podcasts. For me, I do the same. I read a lot and I do listen to a lot of podcasts. But there's a time for me, I'm interested to know your response, that I listen to so much, then it's like kind of like, okay, I need to get to work on some of this because it like kind of overwhelms me.
Too much.
I listen to so much stuff, I'm just like, well, I'm not doing any of it.
You have to shut it off and actually apply some of it.
Well, and that's why podcasts are good, because it's not always 15 million ideas coming out of it. It's just some of it's reinforcement of what you're already doing. The books are awful with what you're talking about, because it's like, oh my gosh, that's a great idea. I need to implement that. And sometimes you just have to say, okay, well, what I read from there, I can make this better. This process I already have, I can just make it a little bit better with what I read or what I listened to. And so I try to do more of that and not the fit. I mean, man, if I had $50 million, we'd be doing injection molding. I'd have a second location for machining in Kentucky. I mean, I got big dreams, but it requires the patience to know that it doesn't happen overnight. There's no such thing as an overnight success. Nobody got there overnight. They put in work.
That's what the people don't see, but like behind the scenes, and that's often what's more important than actually what people do see.
Doesn't it suck though when you're going through it?
Oh,
Like
it
you're
sucks.
just like, I need to be patient, but I know this is what I have to do. But then you're just like, I want it to go faster, but I know I need to be patient. So
It
it's like,
sucks.
It's momentum happens over time, right? It doesn't happen overnight. Momentum happens over time because you did the same thing over and over and over again. There is another great podcast. This one you'll like. It's called The Knowledge Project, and this guy Shane Parrish does it, and they have some phenomenal guests on there. And I would say that 90% of what they talk about is making better decisions. And they bring up guys like Charlie Munger, who was kind of Warren Buffett's mentor, if you will. He just died recently in 99 at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And Charlie Munger is that guy that's like, I just do the same thing. At 30, people said, oh, you're never going to be successful. And 50, oh, if that's all you're going to do, you'll never be successful. But it was that constant doing the same right thing over time. Right, and that's the key to any. You look at any successful business; it's doing the right thing over and over.
So would you say it's harder to start a business and build up that momentum, or scaling and growing it and getting it to that next level?
Scaling is awful. Growing a business is the hardest thing. I thought running the business was the hardest thing I've done. Growing the business is the hardest because it's the I don't know what I don't know.
what area of it would you say, like the people like to hire in, or like the marketing to get new customers to get you more cash flow?
Yes.
No.
No, but it's not. It's not just the marketing, right? The marketing and the sales go hand in hand. The people, the right people on the right seats on the right bus is critical. That culture that I mean, I've been doing this now for 9 years, and you walk in that building and almost everybody can tell you the core values, and they can tell you why it's important and why we do the things we do.
Yeah, well, you gave me a tour through your guys' facility, and yeah, you can tell, like everyone's, like you said, that they don't seem like they're just like as they walk in, everyone's
They all got
attitude.
the Parts Hero branding t-shirts.
Oh yeah,
Well,
yeah.
and
There you
that
go.
was- and it's Parts Hero brand.
there you go.
right
Boom.
there. But which I was laughing too, because you guys were talking about branding, right? You guys had an episode where the two of you were talking about branding, and nobody cares about the color of your brand. Nobody cares. Like when you look at, this is our brand, right? The Walter, it's got a stem, it's a faucet stem, right? Which is what we make, and it says Walter, and it's superior quality. But I get more customers commenting on this, and we've got it on our. So when we do our shows, we got it on the tablecloths, and everybody knows who we are because of this. And this brand isn't about us; it's about our customer. We're making the customer the parts hero. We have in the core values, one of the things it says is the customer is the hero of our story. They're the hero of our story, because if they're successful, we're going to be successful.
That's kind of the thing where, like in the episode, if you've seen it, where I don't know if it came out this way, but the thing is that because you flipped it and it's based on the customer. Usually when we make our logo, it's based like, oh, I think this looks cool. Like we don't ask like, let's do a poll. Which logo should I have? It's pretty much like, I think this is cool. Let's do this one. Right. And we're huge on brand. Like I have my car, I have my water bottle. I got everything. So I think I think everybody should build a brand with the purpose behind it.
And it's also like when it comes to like building a logo, making a logo, when you do it down the road, when you got like a little bit more momentum versus doing it at the very beginning.
Right.
And a lot of people spend so much time at the beginning before they start their business on the logo, getting it perfect.
And then they don't want to change it.
When in the beginning it doesn't even matter.
Right.
Like the first thing, dude, get going, and then you'll figure out the logo later. It's kind of similar to what we did. We just like kind of made something, and we're like, cool, whatever. And then we recently kind of like just
recently changed it. The Parts Hero has been a step-by-step process that wasn't intentional. So the first branding we kind of did was Got Parts, the whole Got Milk thing. And so we did all these Got Parts shirts and stuff like that for customers. And customers loved the Got Parts thing. And then when I really focused on that whole making the customer the hero of the story, that's when I went to first thing I did was this logo where it's doing the Superman pull and it says Got Parts. And then I went to the Parts Hero, and so
did you come up with all those three?
I think my brother Lauren did the Got Parts one, and then I did taking the Got Parts and doing the superhero, and then I went to the Parts Hero thing.
Okay.
So, but it's been a progression of things, and then the Parts Hero has just really resonated with customers because that's what we do. That's one of the biggest things. That's the entry level to get a customer to let us serve them, and then they trust us. Is we have a help desk email and a texting function, and so the customer can send us a picture of a stem or a cartridge, a part, and on that picture they send it to us, and we'll identify it for them because they don't know what it is. People. You walk in, you're a homeowner, you're a plumber, you walk in and say, I need that part. And they're like, right? We don't do parts. We have so many people that are like, we don't do parts. And then once I show them that we can identify, I'm like, And so we have counter mats that say Parts Hero with a ruler on it. And so they can take a picture right there with the ruler, send us, we'll identify it for them. And there's no minimum. So they love it. We get that's the entry level for the customer to, it's like, okay, I'm going to do business with them because they're going to serve me properly.
That's interesting. Focusing on something that might not make as much money, but then in the long run, that's
a relationship, right? Okay. It's part of those 6 core values. Build a relationship. We're serving others. We're serving the customer. We're building the relationship, and that's long term going to be the better way to do business. Okay, I'm going to be careful because we're recording things, but there's certain plumbing supply houses that I stay away from and keep at a distance, and then there's some I won't sell to. Just there's not a good there's not a relationship. They don't care if I exist tomorrow. I mean, we've heard stories of places like and they don't do plumbing parts, but places like Walmart, that how they treat their vendors. If you've ever done any research about that, they have a vendor agreement. They have a certain percentage that they can destroy in field of your product. Where it's like, I'm sorry, we're just
really.
Yep. There's so much. They demand like, oh, we can return anything, and we're only going to pay this restocking fee, or we're not going to have a restocking fee. You can't give us a price increase for 90 days. With that, you have to give us 90 days notice to give a price increase. I won't do those. I'm not playing those games. And so there's some bigger plumbing supply houses, F word, that we don't go after because I'm not playing their games. If they want to do business with us because they want to have us serve them, and in turn they're going to serve us in that way, right? It's a relationship that benefits both people. Otherwise, why do it? I mean, I want to be around for my team members and their families for 50 years from now, not 5 months.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome that you're able to get to that spot where you have that kind of leverage where you're just like, I'm not kind of doing this, or you can kind of put your rules in the game, not just kind of bend to whatever they want you to do. So branding, right? What's your ideal customer? You put that face out there. I mean, that's one of the things people talk about in marketing all the time. Is you have to think about what's the face of the ideal customer, and our ideal customer is the independent plumbing supply house. The independent plumbing supply house is a plumbing supply house that is family owned and operated. They're not a publicly traded company. They are going to have some of the same pain points that we have as a family business, right? They
hiring, training, retaining, cash flow. All those things are part of their DNA, just like they are ours. So I don't have a stock portfolio backing me that oh, your stocks went up. That doesn't happen. So so I got to be more conscious of who we do business with.
If you could go back 10 years before you took over the company, what would you give yourself, like, advice? Like, what advice would you give yourself?
Do it sooner. I was already. It's hilarious because I went to, like I said, I went to work for my dad 30 years ago, and I was running machines that I got rid of. I don't have those machines anymore. I hated them. They were automatic machines, but they weren't computer machines. Like everything we have now is all CNC. So the guys go over there, they set it up, they walk away from it. It's running. They go set up another one, and we got 15 machines, and we set up 15 to 30 jobs a day. So we're cranking it out. But I remember the very first thing I took from him was probably within 5 years of working there. We ran out of brass material, we ran out of brass rod, and I went to him and I said, "Where's the I didn't get any bar ordered. I was busy with this, and well, that's my job now." And I did that for so many years until I became COO, and I put myself in that position. He didn't say, "Oh, you're now." I just said, "Well, I'm now." and
another
so
characteristic of a leader, right there, just taking charge.
Yeah, and so I should have done that way before. But I tell all our team members too. I'm standing on the shoulder of giants. My grandfather started doing this in the 50s. He was in World War II. He was a machinist in the Navy. He was stationed in like New Zealand, Australia. Imagine back then there was no supply chain to get you parts for your airplanes, right? Like, you're like, hey, we need to order this. It didn't work that way. And so he had a machine shop. He had a machine that that was down there as part of the Navy, and he would make parts for and my son would tell you exactly what planes they were, PB, Y, whatever, and that's how he got into being a machinist. And then he, when the war was over, he was working for a plumbing supply house in Los Angeles, and he talked them into buying a machine, and he would go home because you had the Depression, you had World War II. Those companies didn't exist anymore, and people were pulling stuff out of their wall going, "This is leaking, I need a new one." That company doesn't exist. And so he said to his boss, he said, "Buy me a machine and I'll make that stuff." So the plumber would come in and say, "Do you have that?" "Nope, but I'll have it tomorrow." and he'd make 3 of them and give the plumber the new one. And so he could make anything and build anything.
You guys were doing the Parts Hero even from back then. See, there you go.
And then my dad, same thing. He just, my grandfather had sold the business and the company had gone under, and my dad was working for the company at the time, and he and my mother bought up all the assets, and I always thought, oh, it's the machines, they're buying all the machines. Well, there wasn't CNCs, and he said, no, it's the parts that your grandfather's accumulated over 40 years, 50 years. Those are the 30 years. Those are the parts. That's the most valuable asset of the company, was all these valve bodies and OEM parts, because that's how you make it. And so he bought up the assets and started on his own. And so I'm standing on their shoulders to do the things my brothers and I are doing, right? He couldn't take it any further. And at some point, somebody's got to stand on my shoulders, because I'm not going to be able to take it any further. I know. I keep telling my brothers, I said, you got about 8 years. I'm going to be 60-something. And by then, somebody else needs to be casting the vision, because they can see further than me at that age. We get older, we get a little bit more short-sighted. So,
yeah. Well, Barry, appreciate you for coming through. Wish you nothing but the best in business, and I'm sure you'll keep smashing business.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me on, and look forward to you guys continuing to do great things in the community. I mean, that's one of the things I love about what you do, is you're bringing people into the community that can elevate our town, our county, which has so much to offer. And I hate seeing the kids leave and go brain drain out to the Front Range like that's got something better to offer. There's a reason we moved out here to Fort Morgan 30 years ago. It's it's a different way of living, and it's something I surely enjoy coming from Los Angeles.
Yeah, no, for sure. Okay, well, appreciate it.
Right,
Thanks for joining us.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.